Right. All right, welcome everybody. Today is the 8th lecture of the trauma class, of the psychology of trauma class. Today we will be going through the chapters 7, 8, 9 of the book Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. And we will be talking mostly about the freeze response, shock, when people go into shock, what happens, right? So chapter 7 talks about the instincts and the neocortex. If you remember, we were talking about we were talking extensively about the evolution, and that how humans were creatures crawling out of water into the land, and then we grew legs and arms, and then we lived hundreds of millions of years with other creatures on the planet. Then we started standing up straight, got from the trees to the fields, and we constantly kept evolving. In the biological layer, in the biological state, there is no such thing about thinking, analyzing, planning. It's all about reacting to whatever comes in front of you. Our bodies react. We have impulses and we have instincts. Over time, hundreds and millions of years, we have learned to use logic. Our prefrontal cortex developed. We have learned to plan, form ideas, analyze things, use syntheses, learn lessons. But all these prefrontal cortex activities, they cannot compete with the reptilian brain and the impulses. The impulses always take over because they're very, very strong. So the book asks some questions. It says, why cannot humans access the wisdom of the nature when it comes to healing trauma? And why do humans get traumatized and animals don't? Why can we not access the intelligence that animals have? What are they doing different? What can we learn from them, right? Remember that when living beings in this planet are facing any kind of threat, any kind of danger, their nervous system reacts automatically. And they have natural reflexes. That natural, the word natural comes from nature, right? It's been embedded in them. It's been encoded in them. Whatever the lower layers of the brain thinks we need to do to stay safe, that's what we do. This is how the living beings, stay alive. Now, when we're traumatized as humans, some kind of a disconnection starts to happen between us and our impulses, right? We start to stray away from our impulses, stray away from our instincts and reflexes, and we get into a more thinking kind of a living system. Our attention orients more towards the neocortex and the thinking part of the brain. Now, we have all types of natural reaction cycles in the nature. We are all for seeking food, seeking shelter, seeking mates, right? Seeking safety. When there's a danger, the reptilian runs. It runs alone, but it runs. When there's a danger, the gazelles, the deers, they run together and they run. So we have all these reflexes kind of encoded into our DNAs, into our programmings. And there's a certain language to those reactions. And in the last lecture, we talked about sensations in our bodies, which is the language of these reactions. Now, today we will talk about the orientation response a little bit. Now, imagine that you are walking on the street and walking home. There's no danger. You're thinking about what you will be doing in the evening, or you're talking on the phone with a friend, or you're posting very important pictures on Instagram. And all of a sudden, from your left-hand side, you hear a little crackle, a little noise, right? Or from your left-hand side, you perceive a shadow moving out of the corner of your eye. You don't know what it is, but you sense some kind of a movement. Upon perceiving this novelty, this new information, immediately your system starts to orient towards what we call novelty. Novelty meaning new information. Whatever you're doing at the moment, you're walking, you're talking with a friend, you're doing something on the Instagram, or you're thinking thoughts, whatever you're doing immediately stops. Your neocortex cannot go on doing the same thing. The reptilian brain comes and takes over, and it takes your attention, it controls your attention, and it orients your attention towards the new information, towards the threat, towards that piece of noise, or towards that movement. Your body gets tense. There's a moment of stopping, right? That moment of stopping is the moment where your neocortex leaves the control to the reptilian brain, right? The reptilian brain comes from underneath and says, I'm taking over right now. I'm the boss now. So this is an involuntary shift. Involuntary means it happens outside of your voluntary, outside of your control, outside of your understanding. Your joints, your muscles, all of your body tissue turns towards the threat. You want to see where that novelty comes from. You want to understand it. Your inside of your eyes, the lenses of your eyes start to contract to catch exactly where that novelty is. Right? This is an uncomfortable sensation in the body, right? And we have to be uncomfortable if we want to live, if we want to survive any kind of a threat. So our senses, our ears, our nose, our eyes, our body turns towards this novelty, and our system organizes itself to understand what this novelty is. Is it? How big is it? What kind is it? Is it threatening? Is it friendly? Is it fast? Is it moving towards a direction? What is this, right? Immediately we turn towards the threat. It's a very healthy, it's a very normal reaction, and it happens in all living beings. When we are traumatized, though, this is something that we will talk more in detail. I just want to touch it very briefly. This reaction is kind of disorganized. It's either frozen, or it is too extreme. It can be late. It can be kind of awkward. There's something wrong with the reaction of orientation when there's so much trauma in the body. But we will again talk about this later. So all beings have been designed to stay alive. And this is the number one priority of the organism. Biologically speaking, staying alive is the success. The biology, the life doesn't care about how much money you make, how many people you know, how many likes you get on the Instagram. Biologically speaking, success means staying alive. And this is our first priority in life. You know, the turtles, they have shells, they go inside their shells. The little rats, they dig inside the ground and they hide inside the grounds. The frogs or bucalemons or certain reptilians, they camouflage, they change their color to go into the same scenery as the environment. Some bugs are created visually very close to what the branches look like, or what the trees look like, what the leaves look like. So they freeze and they blend in with the environment. So all animals have strategies embedded in them to stay alive. Even in fights, when animals fight and they're about to lose the fight, they lower their heads, they put their tails in between their legs, they lower their bodies, they go under their opponents to signal that I'm giving up. That's it. You beat me. I don't want to fight no longer. I accept defeat. So these are all encoded behaviors into our systems. Now, when there's a threat, the body does certain things automatically in order to stay alive. The freeze is one of these strategies. When there's a threat, the system wants to go away. If going away doesn't work, it goes into fight. If it doesn't work, it goes into freeze. Now, the freeze is as important as fight or flight. Actually, they're called within the same category: fight, flight, freeze reactions. And humans, we go through the same exact motions. We go into fight, we go into flight, we go into freeze. And as psychologists, you need to start to train your eyes to catch cues of freeze, the cues of fight or flight in people. So when you speak to someone, when someone is angry, you can catch signs of anger. If you're looking at someone angry, if you mute all the noises, if you don't have any sounds, you can see that the body gives some signals of anger. You know, the hands get tight, the voices get raised, the jaw gets tight, the eyes get bigger, the chest starts to get puffed up. Well, you know, the blood starts to flow more into the arms and legs and chest and jaw of the body. You can see this in the fight reaction. You can see this in the flight reaction, in the running reaction, right? Those of you who have pets and dogs, you can sense if they get scared. You can sense it in their body language. That's the same thing with the freeze. Sometimes you see your friends get into a freeze reaction. Their movements, their thinking patterns, their reactions start to go numb. Their voice reflects their freeze, the way they slow things down. So you can start to detect a freeze motion in people. Now, why do people, or why do animals go into freeze? There are actually four basic reasons why, when fight or flight doesn't work, animals go into freeze. To protect themselves, says Nilüfer. How do they protect themselves? So when, let's say that you're a gazelle and you get chased by a lion, all of your body, all the subsystems of your body, the heart, the respiratory system, the hormones, they're going crazy, pumping everything so that you can run. You run and you run and you run, and somehow you trip, or there's more than one lion, and then they cover you and then chase you and they get you. So running didn't save your life. Then you start to fight. You see animals moving frantically, trying to get away, trying to fight the predator. That's not going to work. The lion has teeth, it's their claws, they're much more stronger than you. They put you into position and they're about to bite you, or they already have bitten you, and you know your skin is tearing. So running didn't save your life. Fighting didn't save your life. Then the brain says, okay, we're going into a shock response, into a freeze response. One, because predators prefer to eat live prey. If the prey is dead, if it's not moving, they choose not to eat it because the meat might have been dead for hours, and there might be some bacteria that's harmful to them. So if the prey stops moving, there's a slight chance that the attack will stop, and they will pretend dead, and they may have a higher chance of running the situation. So that's number one. Animals pretend that they're dead. Two, the predator animals are designed to catch movement, like wild birds, like hawks and eagles. As they're flying up in the air, they detect moving animals. If a rabbit is stable, it's static, it's not moving, they don't detect it. But the slightest movement, if the rabbit is walking or running, that's when they see their targets and that they start to move towards them. There's some animals that hunt during the night. They can detect movement of heat, like some snakes. They can detect heat moving, and then they catch their prey. Or some frogs or some reptiles, they only detect movement. If a little bug is not moving, they don't see it. They walk over it. So by not moving, they will stop triggering the aggressive instinct in the predator, right? If the opponent is not moving, my impulses to keep attacking stop, right? As long as the prey is moving, I'm trying to kill him. But if the movement stops, my impulses stop as well. So that gives another strategy to move out of the situation. The third reason is that when the body realizes that it's dying, it goes into conservation mode. The brain says, okay, we're going towards dying, we're not going to survive this. So I might as well keep my energy low and live as long as I can. I'm going to lower my heart rate to the minimum. I'm going to stop all kind of mating movements, all kind of sexual movements. I'm not going to produce any eggs. I'm not going to produce any sperm. I'm not going to spend any energy on digestion. Whatever food I have can stay there. What about growth? I'm going to stop all kinds of activities that will demand energy so that there's no energy wastage. I'm conserving energy just with my heartbeat to keep my body alive so I can stay alive as long as I can, right? So in order to extend life, the body goes into conservation mode and freezes. And the last reason is the hormonal glands release analgesic hormones like anesthesia. They release endorphins and oxytocins, among many other hormones, and they have an impact just like opioids. You know what opioids are? Opioids are heroin. When you take heroin, you have no feeling of pain. So if the body is dying, the system says, okay, let me have a painless death. Let me have a peaceful death. So it releases a bunch of opioids in the freeze moment, and the body stops feeling pain. So if you believe in God, if you believe in existence, if you believe in whatever you believe, that's a sign of mercy, right? If the animal is dying, the system allows the animal die in peace. So this is what the freeze is all about. You're dying in peace, you're conserving energy, and you are using your last chance to run away if your attacker thinks you're dead and stops attacking you. Now, animals orient to the threat. They run or they fight or they freeze. But when the threat is gone, when there's no more danger in the environment, they slowly come back to life. Their heartbeats goes up, their breathing goes up, and they come back to life. You can see many videos in the internet. I'm going to type up, this word is here, this word called pronking. Please go to YouTube and type pronking, and you will see many animals just moving erratically, jumping, running, moving in a crazy way, just to release the energy that was stuck in their body during a freeze, right? Or you can see another video on gazelle coming out of freeze. There's video of animals who have been threatened by larger animals, and they go into freeze. They act like they're dead, and then when the attacker goes, they slowly come back and they shake it off. They move and they come back to life, right? So this is animals coming back to homeostasis, coming back to life after freeze. Now, in chapter 8, we talk about freeze in humans. We also go to freeze, but we don't come back like animals. We stay frozen and we stay traumatized. Now, before I go into chapter 8, I've been talking for about 20 minutes. Let's take some time for any questions. Any questions, anything you'd like to share, anything you'd like to say for a few minutes. No questions? Is everything pretty clear? All right. Good. So this is freeze. Now, this is freeze in animals. Now, in humans, again, freeze is one of the most important reactions that are embedded in our DNA: fight, flight, or freeze. Now, there's a little imbalance in the text. I'm sorry about that. So, reactions to threat. When there's a threat, the organism realizes threat. It tries to go towards safety by choosing between fight, flight, or freeze. These are all extensions of the same instinct to stay alive. They're like integrated into the system. They're not separate from each other. Sometimes you might be feeling freeze, but you might have a lot of fight underneath, or you might be fighting with an impulse to flee, or you might freeze in the middle of a fight. So there might be a combination of things. The brain has all these tools and decides which one to use under threat. You have no choice within your prefrontal cortex. Your neocortex has nothing to say about that, right? It's not a choice. Unless you're highly trained, unless you're trained for years as a martial artist, as a fighter, or as a soldier, then you can learn how to use your neocortex under extremely stressful situations. But other than that, our neocortex just freezes, just is out of the picture when this happens. Right. So how do we freeze? When fight is not possible, when flight is not possible, or when fight or flight they do not work. That means that I'm in a situation, I'm not being attacked by a lion, but I'm being abused by my father. I'm a little kid, and there's someone strong that is doing something to me. And I sense that if I react, the situation will get worse. If I sense that if I run, I will get more punishment. So I have to stay in a situation, right? Some kids get bullied, and if they run, it's going to get worse. If they fight, it's going to get worse. So they have to stay in the situation, right? Many situations at work, at school, we have options of fighting, fleeing, and freezing and we end up choosing to stay with it and freeze and go into shock. Now, it's a very vulnerable situation because the energy, the fight or flight energy, stays stuck on the inside, and depending on what energy we have right before freeze, that feeling also stays stuck on the inside. So if my energy inclines towards running, then I'm full of fear and terror, and that feeling gets stuck on the inside. But if my impulse is to fight, then I'm filled with rage, anger, and the feeling of this upset, anger, rage stays stuck on the inside. So when humans go into a freeze, some emotion also stays stuck on the inside, either fear or anger, or both. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand that? Freeze is never a naked emotion. Thank you, Yammer. Thank you, Zainab. It also carries a certain emotion on the inside. And then when we get out of the freeze, when we start to move out of the freeze, whatever emotion is stuck on the inside starts to take over, right? I'm sure all of you have experienced freeze at some point in your lives. You're frozen. And then when you start to come out, whatever emotion that was stuck there will also start to come out. It's a very, very important phenomenon to understand. Now, the philosophy of trauma, the theory of solving trauma, healing trauma, we have to learn how to touch those emotions on the inside. We have to learn how to release these emotions in a gentle, in a slow, in a humane way in a relationship, right? Sometimes these emotions are so strong, people decide to stay frozen rather than facing these emotions, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, if coming out of a freeze, I can tap into my impulses to run, I will not get as traumatized. If coming out of a freeze, if I can tap into my impulses to fight, I will not get as traumatized. But because these impulses are too intense and it's difficult for a human to face them, that's why the freeze response stays longer, right? So this frozen energy in humans can also be from two reasons. One, like I said, the running will not save my life. You know, my abuser, my opponent will get more angry and I will get punished. Then I stay and freeze. Two, fighting back will not save my life. Then I stay and freeze. Or let's say that I'm in a fight or I'm running and the energy is so high. It keeps going up and up and up, but I cannot release it for some reason. You know, it's getting too intense and the circuits are about to burn. Like the muscle tissue is getting so hot. The stomach acid is so high that it's going to start eating the mucosa around the stomach. It's going to cause ulcer. My veins are pumping with blood and I cannot release the energy. My heart is going to explode and it's going to go into crisis. That's when my body says it's too much. It's too much. My body is going to be damaged. So I stop everything. I shut everything down, shut down the operation, and you go into collapse. This is immobility freeze, passing out. So if you think about the process, of this, neocortex is by design always trying to be in control of your life. It's always trying to make the decisions. It wants to protect the social balances. It wants to protect the relationships. I have a certain ego, a certain identity, that I've built over 40 years on this planet. Neocortex tries to preserve it, to protect it. So when these animal impulses come from underneath, it doesn't want to give in. It wants to protect the identity. So there's a big clash. There's a conflict in the brain between the neocortex and the reptilian brain. So the neocortex tries to fight the impulses. When I was giving this class last year, a student of mine asked a question. He said, sometimes I get bullied by my friends and I want to react, but I stop myself. That's exactly what freeze is, because when you're getting bullied, what you want to do is run. But if you run and flee the situation, when you come back, you'll have bullies waiting for you to punish you worse. You want to fight the bullies, but if the bullies are stronger than you physically, and there's going to be consequences of your fighting, then your system makes a genius decision, a very intelligent decision, and stops. So when neocortex makes you do that, all of that energy that's been activated, that's been mobilized, that's been oriented, gets locked inside. Now, if the threat is not so high, if the threat is to a certain level, you can still have your neocortex on and you can still make certain decisions. But if the threat is really high, then the neocortex gets taken over, gets dominated by the reptilian brain. Think of an experiment that you're in a room. In the room, you have nothing but a bed, and you're on the bed in an empty room, and you have your phone, and you're trying to make a post on Instagram. Let's say that there's a mice under the bed, that I will tell you that there's a mice under the bed. So you can be curious about it, you can feel anxious about it, and you will be looking for it, but you can still stay with your phone and do the job, right? Your eyes will be looking for the mice, but you can use your neocortex to bring them back. But if I tell you that there's a snake under the bed, now that is a real danger. The level of danger is so high, you may not be able to keep your eyes on the phone to type. Your reptilian brain will take over and your eyes will be looking for the threat. Your body will be moving in the best way possible to avoid the threat. Even if you push yourself to stay concentrated on the task, keep your attention on the phone, your attention will be hijacked by the reptilian brain, right? So this is the main difference between animals and the humans. Animals go in and out of freeze, in and out of fight or flight as they need, but the humans, we have problems with that. Yağmur says, if it's supposed to be very dangerous. So she says if she sees a mice, she will stop and look for it. Yeah, for some people, mice is very dangerous. Mice is very threatening. So when there's a mice in the room, you cannot keep your neocortex on. The reptilian brain will take over and you will go into orienting towards the mice. Right? For some people, mice is not that dangerous. They have pet mice. They have pet little animals, little hamsters. So they won't feel as threatened and they can still keep their neocortex on. Yeah. But that's the main difference between animals and humans in that sense. We do not allow the natural process to take over, so that energy stays stuck. In animals, the fight, flight, or the freeze can last for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then they can go back to the regular state of being, right? Whereas us, what happens is that the reptilian brain takes over. The reptilian brain takes over. The huge energy is stuck on the inside. And when the threat is gone, when I'm ready to go back into regular state, when I'm ready to release, let go of all that energy, I'm thinking, oh my God, there's too much energy. If I cry now, if I scream now, if I punch now, if I move in a crazy way now, I'm going to be hurt. Or the person I'm in relationship with me will be hurt. Or the relationship will get hurt. So that fear of the consequences will overwhelm the system and I will go back to freeze. I come out of the freeze, but I will go back to freeze because it's too much, right? So sometimes the actual threat is gone, but the freeze response stays long time in the system. Imagine someone who escapes rape or physical abuse. Imagine a soldier coming back from the war. Imagine a person who came back from being attacked by a wild animal. They have such a erratic, crazy energy on the inside. They want to run like crazy. They want to fight like an animal. And it's just too much. And there are so many movies and books about vengeance, the rage, the anger that stays stuck on the inside, finally being released, finally finding its own place. We have such a deep connection as humans to seeing the energy coming to completion. So, and the last thing I want to say about this, when that energy is stuck on the inside, we spoke a little about that last week. It's corrosive. It's toxic. It creates a lot of depression and anxiety and aggressiveness on the inside. Yes, Nilüfer. Nilüfer is asking in Turkish, saying o yoğun enerji nasıl oluyor? Can you detail a little bit more the question? I don't understand the question. Or you can turn on your microphone and ask it as well. So that energy that's stuck on the inside, let's say I'm being attacked by two human beings, and like an animal on this planet, my reptilian brain releases so much adrenaline, so much cortisol. My heart starts to beat fast, my blood runs inside my arteries faster, I breathe faster, there's more oxygen inside my body, there are more hormones in my body, my blood goes into my muscles. I get into a fighting mode or a flying mode or running mode. But if I cannot do any of these, all of that energy that's been mobilized, that's been activated, stays locked inside the system with the feeling of I'm scared or I'm upset. And I freeze, I go into shock. That's the energy that I'm talking about. And when you come out of the shock, that energy, that feeling needs to be released. But most of the time when freeze is over, when we're coming back to life, it's too scary to face this energy. That's why it stays stuck on the inside, right? So when the energy too high, we're scared of screaming because we've been educated, we've been trained, we've been conditioned to keep things in a certain way, right? That's when this energy turns into symptoms, right? Peter Levine, in the book, in the, I think, 8th chapter, it talks about symptoms as a safety valve. There's too much energy in the body. and the body is trying to contain it. It's trying to control it. It's very difficult to contain it. That's why you have to start to see symptoms. That energy is trying to move. You will have eating disorders. You will have an impulse to eat too much or eat too little or throw away what you eat. You will have sexual disorders. You will be stuck with wanting too much sex or too little sex, or during sexual activity, your body will show disorders. You will have problems of sleep. Some people can't go back to sleep because they can't stop their heads. Some people sleep so much they cannot get out of bed. They're in a depressed state. They have attention disorders. Your attention stays stuck. It gets obsessed with things. It gets compulsive with things. Or you cannot pay attention to anything. You're constantly threatened and you're looking for some kind of a threat. So this is a difficult situation to contain when the energy is stuck inside the body. You will have anxiety and depression, all kinds of attention and emotional disorders. Now, doctors, the medical system, the way they work is they focus on the symptoms. They want to suppress the symptoms. They want to give you medication to stop the symptoms from happening. But as a psychologist, I don't focus on the symptom. I try to understand the mechanism that's underneath. How can I help my client to release that energy in a gentle way in relationship with me? How can we tap into this energy and bring it back into life and integrate it in a way that's titrated, that's in small increments, not in a big catharsis? How can I get my client to be in touch with that energy in a very gentle, slow, gentle way, right? If you have heard of William Reich, I'm going to write this here. William Reich, he talks about body armoring. The body creates armors, defenses around itself to contain this energy. So this is the end of chapter 8. Any questions? Does this make sense? You guys understand it? Do you want anything to share? Good, good. Thank you, Zainab. So we've been talking about a good 45 minutes. Why don't we take a break? Because we still have a little bit more material to cover, and my experience says that 40 minutes is best for the attention span. So let's take 8 minutes break. Right now it's 2 minutes past the hour. We'll be back at 10 past, okay? 8 minutes break now. All right. All right, is everybody back? I actually want to keep the classes within the hour, so I'm going to kind of go fast for the last chapter, chapter 9. So what did we say? So Doğukan says, hocam bu içeride sıkışan enerjiyi düzgün şekilde dışarı aktarmanın yolları nedir? Terapi sırasında neler yapılabilir? Now, Doğukan is asking, what is the method of releasing this energy that is stuck inside the body? What can we do in therapy? So this is the core of somatic psychology, of body-oriented psychology. That's my specialty. I can speak for hours about that, but for time purposes, I'm going to touch very little on it. So, Dokan, when someone is traumatized and the energy is frozen and stuck on the inside, what happens is their attention stays stuck on the negative things. It's difficult for them to be in touch with their own resources, right? They look at life and they see mostly what's threatening, what could be harmful to them. So number one thing to do is to work on bringing their attention to their resources, right? So that they can feel strengthened to move. The second thing is to, as a therapist, is to learn how to talk about trauma, how to mention trauma in very small increments. And you watch the person's body's activation. When the body starts to get activated as they're talking about trauma, you need to stop and then use sensations. You need to stop the story. You need to go into sensations. Say, let's feel this activation right now together. But only when the activation is very, very low. When the activation starts to get higher, you don't go into the body. You relax the client. So what you do is you work with the activation when the body mobilizes these fight or flight energies or freeze energies. You go in there and you stay with it just a little bit, long enough so that the client can tolerate it, but not too long that it will re-traumatize the client. And that's the mistake that's done by a lot of psychologists. They push the client to talk about their emotions. They push the client to talk about their traumas when the client is not ready, and clients get re-traumatized again. They get into freeze again, refrozen again. So you need to learn how to do this in very small, gentle increments, just a little bit, and then we move back. So we move back and forth between resources and the trauma energy. Go back to resources, come back to trauma energy. Go back to resources, come back to trauma energy. So the client slowly starts to feel like, oh, I can move. I can have some room to breathe. There's flexibility. There's plasticity between this. I know this sounds a little theoretical, but in a session that would look like, let's say you come to me and start talking about something that traumatized you, I would have a contract with you in the beginning and say, you know what, I'm going to allow you to talk about your trauma, but when we both feel like it's getting too intense, we're going to stop the story and we're going to go into the story of the body. What are you feeling in your body right now? What kind of activation do you feel? Any kind of heat, any kind of vibrations, any kind of tingling, any kind of space? So you will talk about your trauma and I will constantly stop you and say, okay, that's good enough. What's going on in your body right now? So we'll go back and forth between the body, and we will always be focusing on resources, any good feelings in the body, any positive sensations in the body, right? So that's the way a somatic psychologist works with this kind of energy. You go back between the story, the narrative story, the actual story, and the story of the body by focusing on resources, bringing the resources out. A lot of times clients, when they tell the story, they tell it as if they couldn't do anything about it. They were the victim. There were a lot of things that they've done, but they don't know how to pay attention to the positive stuff, right? So I will bring their ability to focus on the positive back into life. This has been a long-winded answer, Doğukan. Does this make sense? Was I able to answer your question? It does bring up more questions, yeah. Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. This is a very, very interesting topic. Especially psychologists. In my office, I see clients in many, many modes. In a freeze mode, stuck in a fight mode, stuck in flee mode. And I have to learn how to recognize these things. I have to develop the perspective to catch that and move with that. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. Good question. Good question, Doğukan. Thank you. So, create a YouTube channel. Now, yes, that's my intention. I'm going to actually put out some YouTube videos. I'm going to create a series of videos talking about the nervous system, what is trauma. There are a lot of informational, good, well-made videos, so I'm thinking about it. You can look at my Instagram. I'm going to start in the new year, maybe sometimes in January. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. There's only one interview over there, but I'm going to start putting more material sometimes in the next few months. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's get with the material. All right, Nilüfer saying, is there, if there's a specific event that a person could not remember, how do you decide this trauma? Yeah, it could be an event, Nilüfer, that has taken place when you were very young, before your neocortex was fully developed. It could be an event that was so intense, so fast, that you couldn't handle being present during the event, and you shut down and you don't remember it. It could be something that happened when you were under anesthesia, when you were in an operation. The doctor may say something and you may not remember this. Or any surgical operations, when a knife is cutting through your body, that's a very traumatizing event that you will not remember because you don't have a memory of it. There may be many events that you can remember parts, but you may not remember the full thing because your memory is fragmented. When, as a psychologist, when I see someone talking about anything, it could be about the event, it could be about something that they're struggling presently in their life. I can see from their nervous system, I can see it from the way they breathe, the way they move their eyes, the way they use their bodies, the way their speech speeds up or slows down, the way their body shows emotions. So I can see it from their body. That's the somatic psychology. That's the body-oriented psychology. I don't need the full event. And as a client, you don't need the full event to work. We only need a little bit of an activation because of what happened in the past, and then we come back to the present and we work with body sensations in the present. So how do I decide it's trauma? I just watch. I listen and I watch, and the body tells the story, right? The client might tell their subjective story. They might tell something completely different than what actually has happened. Sometimes clients, they want to be approved. They want to be liked by me. They want to tell me stuff that they think I will like them. So story is not always accurate, but the story of the body is very honest. You cannot paint the story of the reptilian brain, of the nervous system. So that's my answer to that. Does that make sense, Nilüfer? Was I able to answer the question? Okay, great. So, oh my God, we're past the hour, so I'm going to keep you guys another 10 minutes to finish this chapter. So, animals, when they are into freeze, when they're into shock, part of them still is alive, part of them still is awake to see what's going on around them. And whenever they feel like there is no more danger, they wake up and they move. And they start to move crazy. That's the pronking I was talking about. They want to release the energy that was stuck. So the animal always shakes the energy off. Whereas humans, it's a whole different story. When we come out of the freeze, we will encounter a high intensity of emotion, a big wave of emotion. It could be either anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness. And when that emotion comes and hits us, and we're not trained to contain our emotions, the system can choose to go back to freeze. Sometimes it's too difficult to stay with an emotion, to face an emotion, and we run from it, right? If we're not trained to feel our emotions, the system will go back to collapsing and go back to immobility. If you have read the book, if you're reading the book, do you remember the story of Nancy in the second chapter? Peter Levine realizes that she's been frozen for a while, and she decides to activate the tiger energy. And that's where the book comes from, the Waking the Tiger. And he goes, tiger is coming. And she starts to do running motions. And she lets out a huge scream to the point Peter Levine thinks, oh my God, cops are going to come. And then she starts to scream and she starts to cry very intensely. And then she was shaking. So all these cathartic movements were Nancy coming out of the freeze state and releasing the stuck energy on the inside. Now, this was back in the 70s, Peter Levine's first experiments with releasing the energy. Since then, he has perfected the art of helping clients release that energy in a gentle, titrated way. Titrated means in a very slow, gentle way. And this is what the somatic experience, the somatic psychology is all about, right? So these are from your book, these two little charts. If you look at the left-hand side, sorry, there's a cycle, that's the trauma cycle. On top, there's an arousal. Right next, there's unsuccessful escape. That means my body releases all that, my body activates all that energy, my heart beats, I get activated, I get into fight or flight mode. Then unsuccessful escape. Unsuccessful escape means either by fighting or by flying, I cannot get out of the situation, right? Either by fighting or by flying, I cannot get out of the situation. So it's unsuccessful escape. And then what happens in an unsuccessful escape? What happens in an unsuccessful escape? That is the fear and desperation. That's the experience of fear and desperation. What does it say in there? I cannot read it. 1 second. So yeah, if after the unsuccessful escape, there is the experience of fear and helplessness. Fear and helplessness. That means that a strong emotion comes into play, and the next thing is immobility. And I go back to freeze. And I go around my life walking around in freeze. The next time when there's an arousal, I remember the unsuccessful escape. I remember the fear and helplessness, and I go back into immobility. So that's a cycle people, they get stuck and freeze. Whenever they feel threatened, whenever there's an action going on, they go back into freeze because they don't know how to handle that intensity of the emotion. Whereas in the chart underneath the line, you see that when there's immobility, what comes after that is arousal. My body gets aroused and I run and I escape successfully and I become empowered. That means that in all animals, they get under attack and they run and they release that energy and they become stronger for an attack next time because they learn something from that experience. And that's the same thing with humans. When we have a situation that's threatening and we're able to mobilize the energy and release the energy by either fighting or running, we shake it off. Yes, it's an emotional, intense experience, but no one dies from intense emotions. And when we're able to contain the emotion and learn from it, we become stronger for next time. Right? This is how that works. And to answer the question of Dokkan, you guys probably haven't read the book yet, but on the 9th chapter, there's the case of Marius. I don't want to talk too much about it. It's a case of a Native American, of an Indian local fellow who goes to Peter Levine with a frozen nervous system. And Peter Levine works on strengthening its resources and walks through a session where he slowly releases, or helps the client release the stuck energies. It's kind of a dramatic case. You know, we psychologists don't have such dramatic cases every day in our sessions, but it happens sometimes. But this is a good example of how Peter Levine works with resources and then helps the client discharge the frozen energies on the inside. So I suggest you read that chapter. You might like it. All right, guys and girls. So this is it for today. It's been a rather long class, but I hope that I was able to spark your interest on the topic of freeze a little bit. Any questions, anything you'd like to share before we go? None. Things were clear, I hope. All right. You are welcome. Nothing else? All right. So I'll see you guys next week. Yes, Yamor, next week we will have chapter 10. If you can read the chapters before the discussion, it'll be more interesting to you. You will have questions and you will get it better. You'll have a deeper understanding. All right. All right. Well, have a good week, and I will see you next week. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, Ece. Thank you, my dear. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.